Our next guest is one of these people who, as you know, needs no introduction, but it'd be remiss of me not to do it. She's one of the best-known faces and personalities in Irish politics. She has a very, very long track record of campaigning for all sorts of stuff, dating right back. I can remember her as a student union leader when she was in Trinity and I was in UCD. She had this mop of bleached hair, and she was always giving out about something. But anyway, she's also our neighbour. She's also the leader of the Labour Party. She's also the person who might very well determine who will be our next Taoiseach. So will you please welcome Ivana Bacik. Is that mic right out for you, Tommy? All right.
Thank you, Guramagat, Gerry.
Right, okay.
Gerry's been badgering me for months to come along, and I've said to him consistently, Gerry, I am the next door constituency. Who you want is the wonderful Senator Rebecca Moynihan. Woo! So I'm hoping Rebecca will be your next political guest. But I'm happy to be here as a favour to you, Gerry.
Funnily enough, you live. You're the second closest living TD to this location.
It sounds like you're contrasting me with a dead TD.
Actually, that's a very good point. You're living almost as close to this pub as one other TD. I'll give you. We could throw it out as a table quiz, right? There's 4 TDs in this constituency, and none of them live particularly close to this venue. There are 2 TDs who are not from this constituency, but they live closer to this pub. Ivana is the second closest. Who's the first?
Too easy, Gerry Mullins. So I live in Portobello, also Dublin 8. Let's give it up for Dublin 8. But I'm in the part of Dublin 8 on the east of Clanbrassil Street, which is Dublin Bay South. And we've just had a constituency review, as you probably know. And sadly for me, this wonderful area was not included in my constituency, so it's still in Dublin South Central. I want to give a shout out to Alison and Michael from Labour Dublin South Central who are here. And we have a terrific team, a terrific local Labour team here with Councillor Dara Moriarty and Rebecca and all the team. I have to give them all a shout out. So even though it's not where I represent, I'm really delighted to be here because I am very close by, and Dublin 8 is very dear to me, and and I think it's unfortunate actually that Dublin 8 is split between 2 constituencies because it does have a really strong identity, and I think Gerry's endeavours in putting the D8 live on the map are a really important way of making Dublin 8 even more wonderful than it already is. So well done, Gerry.
All you need to do is open a brewery as well. Okay, well, thank you very much. Tell us about the Baciks. The Bacik isn't an Irish name. Where are you guys from?
So, well, I'm Irish, and unlike some people in various election campaigns I've been involved in, who have written on my posters, "Go home to Romania." And I had to say to them, at least get it right. My father is from the Czech Republic originally, was born there, and then his father brought the family over in 1946 as refugees. My grandfather had been in the Czech resistance, was in Nazi prison camps during the war, was imprisoned during the Second World War. And then after the war, when the communists took over in Czechoslovakia, there's a very shameful period in Czech history where the communists locked up people who'd been in the Czech resistance alongside people who'd been Nazi collaborators. And my grandfather could see what was going to happen and luckily got out before it was too late. Came over here, came to Waterford where he had connections with the glass industry and re-established Waterford Glass, what became an iconic Irish company set up by refugees from the Czech Republic. He brought over designers and craftspeople from Bohemia. And there's now a plaza we're very proud of, as of 2 years ago, in the centre of Waterford City called Bacik Plaza, after my grandfather. So it's a really important success story for inward migration, for refugees, but it does mean I have to explain my name wherever I go.
Especially to lazy interviewers, is it?
I didn't want to say that.
So, do you have shares in Waterford Glass?
I wish. No.
Well, it's a very impressive story because Waterford is iconic of Ireland. You know, I mean, for decades, people would hop on coaches in Shannon and eventually end up in Waterford. It was a very important stop along the way. So that goes back to your grandfather.
That's right, yeah, but it was in fact a mark, an Irish brand from the 19th century and had closed down. The Waterford brothers, called Penrose Brothers, and set it up originally. You can ask me anything about the history of Waterford Glass, I know all about it. Myself and my good friend Henry McCurvey are working on a documentary about the history of Waterford Glass. It is fascinating, genuinely, perhaps not for late at night on a Friday night when you're coming after a brewer who's done a beer tasting, because it's very hard to beat that. But there is a very interesting story about how there was a long period in the history of Waterford Glass in the 60s and 70s where the contribution of a refugee from Czechoslovakia was completely written out of the history, and it was written up as an indigenous Irish brand that had no foreign intervention. And if you look at histories of Waterford Glass published in the 1970s and into the 1980s, you won't see any reference to any Czech input. And that all changed then more recently, happily, and the real history has been written again. So there's a lot of rewriting to do. But it is interesting to see how refugees, migrants can make such a positive contribution. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about ensuring we have a welcome here for refugees. And I know, there's huge initiatives around Dublin 8, around my own constituency. We've recently set up a D6 for all group in Ranelagh, and there's a hugely warm feeling and a hugely warm cultural welcome for refugees and migrants in Ireland generally, because we're a nation of emigration as well.
Well, with all that kind of writing out of history, it's not surprising people thought you were from Romania.
I know. Well, I'm happy to say the story is that the people who wrote the stuff on the posters and burnt my posters, because this goes on, it's not just toxic debate online, we get a lot of abuse in person too. So the story was that the people who were damaging posters, some of them were prosecuted for criminal damage. I was asked what penalty did I think should apply to individuals who are convicted of criminal damage for damaging election posters, and I said, work in voter education, so work with the Vincentian Trust in West Dublin on voter education. It was brilliant. It was restorative justice in action. So that's the kind of thing we can see that really helps, to try and, I suppose, re-educate or restore people's faith in democracy, because it's profoundly anti-democratic. We saw it last week outside Leinster House, people pretending to hang effigies of public representatives, profoundly anti-democratic. Fascism in action is what we saw outside Leinster House, and it has to be called out. So then, your family were obviously based in Waterford, but you didn't grow up in Waterford, and how did you end up in Dublin 8? So my mother is a Murphy who grew up in Kilkee in County Clare. If anyone here has any links with beautiful County Clare, you'll know just how wonderful a part of the country it is. And so she and my father met in Dublin, where my mum was living and my dad was in college. And fast forward, we grew up in London, in Cork, and here in Dublin since I was 14. We moved up here, and I'm really proud to represent a constituency that for me has always been home, even though we've lived away in Cork, in London, in different places. For me, South City Dublin, South Inner City, Dublin 6, Dublin 8, that's really home. So that's it.
So, somewhere along the way, you became leader of the Labour Party, Ireland's oldest political party.
Yes.
A very proud record in terms of links with the trade union movement, various aspects of Irish history, given us two of our best presidents. But there's
the two best.
The two best, all right. But there is a but coming up, right? And the but is, it struggles, for want of a better phrase, right? I think it was six TDs in the last election. You've made it 7, but that's kind of right down there with new parties like Social Democrats, who came in with the same number, only one ahead, I think it was, of people before profit. So it's a fair question to ask, but where did it all go wrong?
Well, first of all, I'm very proud to be leader of the Labour Party. It's a party I first joined when I was in Trinity, in college, in the late 80s, at a time when Labour was also at a low ebb, and when the left, social democracy, socialism in Ireland was being written off. So, we've been here before. At that time, for me, Labour represented the only party I wanted to join, because we are the party of the trade union movement. We're the political wing of the trade union movement, and I'm a passionate trade unionist, always been a trade unionist and a student union activist before that, and also because we have such a long track record of standing for progressive change in Ireland. If you look at the changes that have been brought into Irish society, Labour has been to the fore in delivering on those. I'm thinking of people like Frank Kluski on social welfare reforms, I'm thinking of Jim Kemmy, I'm thinking of the wonderful Nia Vranek, who was a great friend to me and a great mentor, and whose reforms in the 1990s in education are still with us today. So for me, Labour has a proud track record, for sure. Yes, we're lower in the polls. Where did it go
wrong, though? Because nobody in the room would doubt a lot of what you said, but somehow it hasn't resonated with voters. If you come back after an election with only 6 TDs, despite all that great work in the past, I'm just wondering, where did it go wrong? And in particular now, you as the new leader, how are you going to put it right?
Well, we're working hard on the ground, grassroots, because we're the party of deep roots and green shoots, as I always say. We've got a great team of candidates for the local elections, and I think what people often miss is we have 7 TDs. We're the second biggest opposition party. That's sometimes missed too. We're also the only party in opposition that has ever served in government. And there's been a pattern, I suppose, in Irish politics where smaller parties that have gone into government in coalitions have tended to be punished, which explains poor performance in the polls since. I think what I would say, though, is that that notwithstanding the smaller numbers in the Dáil, we have 4 senators. We have a former Senator Lorraine Higgins at the back, former Labour senator, and good to see you, Lorraine, again. And we have 56 councillors around the country. So we are very much a force to be reckoned with on local authorities. And I think that reflects the grassroots activism that we carry out in Labour. Since I've become leader just a year and a bit ago, I've been really honoured to travel around the country and to meet so many local organisations that have been working for so long for Labour. I'm thinking like Michael and Alison, here in Dublin South Central. I'm thinking of our members in Galway and Cork and Limerick and Waterford, who have just been working so hard on the ground, and I think that will be reflected in the locals next year. So, the polls certainly at the moment, the momentum is with Sinn Féin. There's no doubt about that, as the biggest opposition party. But let's not forget that in 2019 Sinn Féin had a disastrous local election, and that their very strong showing in the 2020 general election was unpredicted by anyone, including all the pollsters. So, as someone who's been in politics a long time, I don't place too much store on opinion polls between elections, because the reality is, and we know this from political scientists, many people, probably the majority, don't decide who they're voting for until the campaign itself takes off. And we saw it in the only electoral contest we've had since COVID, which was the July 21 by-election in Dublin Bay South, where we were written off at the start. I remember, some of you may recall, well, you may not. I recall it because it was obviously relating to me, but there was a lot of satire saying Labour are crazy if they think they've any chance in this by-election. It's going to be between Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. And that was what the polls were saying. We won that election. We topped the poll. We got 30% of the first preference vote in Dublin Bay South. It was a phenomenal, it was a huge grassroots campaign by Labour activists from around the country who came into Dublin Bay South, campaigned with me. So, I think often we place a little too much store on opinion polls between elections. We have to be mindful that elections in Ireland are when the actual election campaign is when most people make up their minds.
Now that said, and I know what you're saying is true. However, I think everybody in this room, everybody else in the world expects Sinn Féin to romp home after the next election. Not with a clear majority, not with a majority, but they should still come in with the most number of TDs, right? And that begs the question, who are they going to go into government with? And when Mary Lou comes knocking at your door, what are you going to say to her?
Well, first of all, can I say that I never, just to go back to that previous point, we should never take election results in any way as a foregone conclusion. I would never take anyone's vote.
So you're going to knock on Mary Lou's door then?
I think I'm always minded. I lived in London in the 1990s, and I have a great friend here, Mandy Turner, I last saw 25 years ago. He's over from Scotland via London. But Mandy will recall the 92 general election in Britain, which was the only British election I've ever voted in as a resident there. And Labour under Kinnock were predicted to win that election, to sweep through the polls. Not all of you here will be old enough to remember the 92 election, but those of you in Britain, but those of you who do will recall, Kinnock had a triumphal rally in Sheffield the week before the election where he said, you know, we're winning, and there was a huge sort of outpouring of celebration after so long under Thatcher. Kinnock lost that election, and afterwards it was said that voting Tory was like masturbating. Nobody said they were doing it, but everyone was doing it. And so everyone had done it in the 92 election in Britain, but they'd all done it covertly. It hadn't shown in the polls, this sweep towards the Tories.
So let me just take you away from masturbation for a moment and talk about Mary Lou. And don't mix the two up, okay?
So in a roundabout way, what I'm saying is, let's not presume anything. I think if you look at the polls, if you look at the Irish Times poll yesterday, for example, you'll see that while Sinn Féin are certainly the biggest party in vote share, if you look at actually the combined share of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, it's equal. In fact, it's very interesting. The country is almost directly polarised between those who will vote for the outgoing government and those who will vote for Sinn Féin. And so it's as likely, and I don't think this is a good thing, by the way. I want to see a change. I think we've had far too long of right-wing government, but it's as likely that we're going to see a return to the current government as it is that we're going to see Sinn Féin.
So I think you've actually answered one of my questions, which was, if you've got the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil bloc on this side and an equal number of votes over here Sinn Féin, I was going to ask you which one you would choose, but I think you've just answered it. You want change.
Well, I want to see change, for sure.
Which means you'd be going over to the Mary Lou side.
Let's just say this. I have serious misgivings about Sinn Féin's policies on a whole range of issues, notably on property tax. So for me as a socialist, it's a fundamental principle that we want to see property tax. We want to see a tax on wealth, a tax on assets, that is the way in which we ensure there is an equitable redistribution of wealth. It's not through income taxation, and people often think the left is about taxing people's income. We don't want to see high taxes on work. We want to see high taxes on wealth, on assets. And Sinn Féin have opposed the local property tax. They've opposed carbon tax. Their credentials on environmentalism and on green policies, which to me are utterly fundamental. I was a founding member of Friends of the Earth Ireland, and for me, the ideal alliance is a Labour-Green alliance, a socialist, social democratic, Green Party, environmentalist, eco-socialist alliance. That's the way forward. We see it in the Netherlands, where the Greens and the Socialists are actually allying formally. So I'm not sure that us and Sinn Féin would be a right mix, and indeed on the numbers, I think, quick answer, the most likely alternative government is Sinn Féin Fianna Fáil. That's the only way the numbers add up currently, if it's not the current outgoing government returned.
So people are going to be sitting here kind of going, will I or will not vote for Labour in the next government? Well, I need to know where they'll go once the votes are counted. And you haven't given us any direction. Where will their vote end up? If they vote for Labour, is that really a vote for Sinn Féin, or is it a vote for Fianna Fáil? Which way is it going?
It's a vote for a different alternative, for an alternative vision of change, and that's what we offered in the by-election. And people, we found, had an appetite for that alternative vision of change. So there's many people, and many of you in this room may be among them, who don't want to see the current government return. They don't want another centre-right government, because you know that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have failed, that the market policies have failed to deliver on housing. We were meeting public meeting next Tuesday in Rathmines on the failure of government housing policy. So we know that the government has failed. But many people are not happy with the idea of a Sinn Féin alternative for the reasons I've outlined, because they don't think Sinn Féin will offer that real change which will put public investment in state services front and foremost. So what we're offering is a different vision of change, Gerry, a vision that people bought into and adopted and supported in the by-election. So my focus as Labour leader is to ensure we bring back as many Labour TDs, as many councillors in the locals and as many TDs in the next general, whenever that is, so that we can form a critical mass, that we and any other centre-left and Green TDs who are elected will be able to go to whoever is the majority party, we don't yet know obviously, and offer a clear set of policies, a series of red lines if you like, or a series of absolute principled policies on which without commitment to which we wouldn't go into government. So I've been very clear, I don't believe in going into government for its own sake. We've learned that lesson in Labour as the only opposition party, the only left-wing party that's ever served in government, that we won't go in again unless we can be sure of making a real difference. But we're serious serious about delivering change. So we want to go into government, unlike people on the far left who will never go into government. And that's a wasted vote.
Well, it's something I want to ask you about, because here we are in Dublin South Central. We have 4 TDs, one Sinn Féin, one People Before Profit, one, can't remember what she was last time, but Independence for Change, I think it was, and one Green. So it's a very left-leaning constituency, and yet there's no Labour TD here. There hasn't been for, I think, 2 or 3 Dáils. And at the same time, I was looking at the results recently. Rebecca, I think, ended up with about 4,000 votes after the last election. The quota was in around 8,500. And the Social Democrat candidate also ended up with about 4,000 votes. In other words, the Social Democrat and Labour votes combined could have got one of them over the line. And it makes me wonder, particularly about yourselves and Social Democrats, but not but the entire left wing. There's so many parties, there's so many personalities all vying for that one little pie. Why don't you all just hold hands and join up together?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we're always asked it. But the right, let's face it, the right is also fragmented. In Ireland for a long time, the centre-right has been divided mysteriously to anyone from outside Ireland between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, without any policy differential between them. It was long past time that they merged, and they've effectively merged in this government, and before that in the confidence and supply arrangement from 2016 to 2020. So the right is equally as fragmented for no objective reason. That's the first point. But I do agree with you. I've always stood for greater collaboration, greater unity on the left. I do think fragmentation of the left is very damaging. I want to work with other parties and individuals who share my visions and views and the values of Labour, our values of equality and solidarity and fairness. So we work with the Social Democrats very closely. We've no policy difference with them. And I very much hope we'll be working even more closely after the next election. But the reality is, currently we are 2 different parties, just as the Greens are a different party. And yet we work very closely with the Greens at local level through every
But have you ever suggested to the Social Democrats to come on into our tent?
Let's just say we have many conversations with our cousins in the Social Democrats.
That sounds like a yes. And in this conversation that you're not admitting to, what was the answer?
There's a lot of very healthy and positive collaboration between us and the Social Democrats, Gerry. I feel like I'm being asked now to, give away an Oscar winner or something in advance. No, it's an ongoing collaboration.
Okay, so let's just talk about the 2 constituencies closest to your heart for the moment. We'll talk about this one first, right? 4 TDs at the moment. Angus Osnadig got twice the quota last time. We can just assume Sinn Féin will get two people across the line this time. Breed Smith had a seat, but she's stepping out of politics. Joan Collins is stepping down. So, what? Is that not? Sorry, Michael, will you stop that? Just rewind, please. We'll cut that part out.
You've just let a large cat out of the bag.
Right, sorry. If anyone sees a cat walking around, would you put it back in the bag, please?
Joan is going to have words with me next week if she hears this.
All right, me too.
You've written her off prematurely.
No, it was a different Joan Collins. I was thinking of the actress. She's 90 now, and she's thinking about retirement.
Nice attempt at recovery, Gerry.
All right. So either way, there's going to be a couple of spare seats, in my view. Because we haven't even talked about Patrick Costello and who he'll be running for and what constituency. So anyway, it's up for grabs. Do you really think Rebecca Moynihan will get in?
Yes, I do. I think Rebecca is a fantastic candidate. And any of you who know Rebecca, who know Rebecca will know her incredible track record, particularly on women's rights, on abortion rights. Just this week, Rebecca and I stood together on a soapbox outside Leinster House. It was like old times for abortion rights. Rebecca, as some of you will know, has been on maternity leave, so she's been out of political activism for a short while, for very happy reasons, because of the birth of her little baby Margot. And many of you will know Margot because she was the baby who Joe Biden befriended when the US President visited Leinster House. And some wonderful photos.
I feel I've let another cat out of the bag there. I'm going to put that back in, and let's talk about your constituency.
So Rebecca will win, and if any of you want to join Rebecca's team, just let me know, or Alison or Michael, and we'd be delighted. I know Alison's laughing. We'd be delighted to invite you to join Rebecca's dynamic and vibrant team. And we've got, as I said, Dara Moriarty and a wonderful young guy, Patrick Dempsey, running in Ballyfermot for us now. So Dublin South Central We'll be Labour again, don't worry.
Will be Labour, okay.
We'll
Let's talk about your constituency, because you did very well in the by-election, and fair play to you. A third of the first preference votes is really impressive. However, the general election is different. And it's you up against Eamon Ryan from the Green Party, Ryan Tubridy's cousin from Sinn Féin. It's a damaged brand now. Mr. Gagan, perhaps, from Fianna Fáil, who ran against you in the by-election? Fine Gael, sorry. Joe Collins, okay, I'll have to do my notes better next time. So tell us about that. You're going to tell me you're going to get elected, but just explain to me how easy or difficult it's going to be.
No, it's a huge challenge. I have a huge battle on my hands in Dublin Bay South. I would never take anything for granted. You know, the conventional wisdom is there'll be five front runners, including myself, but battling for 4 seats in a shrunken constituency. And I was very sorry in the boundary review to lose Kimmage C ward, which I'd been working really hard in. I'd won a lot of votes back from Sinn Féin in and around Sundrive Park and Clogher Road, an area I love. And, you know, so very disappointingly, we've lost that. It's going to go to Dublin. It's gone into Dublin South Central, so Rebecca will be canvassing there. But it just shows, I think, the kind of crazy system we have where the Boundary Commission will literally take people in and out of a constituency, deny people, in my view, democratic entitlement to be represented by the person they voted for previously in the next election. But that's a whole other story. So it will be a battle.
So who'll get through? Who are the horses who will get across the line?
Gerry, if I was a political commentator, you could ask me that question, but I'm going to be one of the horses, so you don't ask the horse. It always amuses me when people say to me, God, I love elections. It must be it's really exciting, it's so entertaining. Yeah, unless you're the horse in the race, then it's not so exciting.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the other people who came in from the world of politics up here to talk to us. In 30 seconds or less, why should people vote for you?
People should vote for the Labour Party.
For you.
Well, I represent the Labour Party. I'm a Labour Party activist to my core. I'm a feminist, I'm a socialist, I believe in equality. If there was one word, I thought you might say one word, equality. I want a more equal society. I've always campaigned for that all my political life since I was a student. That's why I'm still in the Labour Party, and that's why I want people to vote Labour, and that's why I believe many more people will vote Labour, for me in Dublin Bay South, for Rebecca in this constituency, and for our candidates in the locals next year.
Okay. I think she got in 29 seconds, so we'll offer 2 bonus questions. These people start getting a bit anxious. They're sitting there with full bladders. They know there's a bar out there. They want to go to the loo. They're tired of listening to politics, but we're going to give them a chance to ask 2 more questions. 2 questions from the floor, and then we'll take a break. Anybody like to ask Ivana a question?
This is where there's a definite
We have a question there on the right. Rita.
Just, can you give us any incidents over the past, let's say, 3 months, where you have felt personally threatened or abused in the course of your work, your political work?
I'm going to repeat the question, okay? Can you give us any incidents in the last 3 months where you were abused or felt personally threatened in the course of your work?
I have many. I often get abuse in the face, on the street, outside Leinster House, coming and going. It's become, unfortunately, Rita, a fact of life. I don't believe it's helpful to talk it up too much, and certainly during that really vicious protest last week, I abided by the advice of the Leinster House security team and didn't go out. But yeah, it is a fact of life, unfortunately. But it's something many of us have lived with. I mean, for a long time, the worst abuse was when in the late 80s, early 90s, as a student activist campaigning on abortion rights, and we used to get horrendous abuse then. When I was 21, my mum used to get calls to the house saying, "Is this the abortion clinic?" And we stopped being in the phone book after that. Went ex-directory in the old days when there were directories. So unfortunately it does become a fact of life, but you have to overcome it, and most people are very polite. Rebecca and I have been chased down garden paths with hammers in the past for being pro-choice and canvassing. That's how it has been. The abortion issue since repeal, happily, has become much less of a fraught issue, and those who are anti-choice have, there's much less abuse on that. But on immigration issues, unfortunately, as anyone involved in media will be aware, that's where now there's a huge amount of abuse going on. But again, it's important to stand up to it. Most people are decent, so it's unusual. These are rare instances, but unfortunately, they tend to focus on public reps. So.
One final question for Ivana. Anybody like to ask it?
What advice would you give to your teenage
The question is, what advice would Ivana give to her 18-year-old self?
I would say just be true, be true to yourself, keep going, no regrets. And actually the best advice I ever got, and I was 18 when I got it, was from the late great Tony Benn. We brought him over, for the British MP, we brought him over to speak in Trinity, and he said to me, we were going through a lot of abuse at the time from SPUC, the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child, and we were being threatened with prison. And Tony Benn said to me, don't let the bastards grind you down. And I always thought, that's the best advice.
Okay, we're going to end on that note, please, ladies and gentlemen, Ivana Bacik. Folks, we're going to take a 15-minute break. 15-minute break. See you back here at 9:05. Back here at 9:05.